So I did promise earlier that towards the end I'd ask you if you could look back on your career and go back to that first day or first week or so in the industry. What's the one piece of advice you'd give yourself?
So as you said that question, I was subconscious thinking about. I was so determined, and just like I would just tell myself, just relax, just like take a step back. It was like I was trying to figure out my whole life in the first 18 months of these Lloyd's rotations, and in hindsight, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Life
Yeah.
has this way of kind of throwing things ahead of you, and you have a choice to make. But as long as you do the right things based on your internal instincts and your gut feel, which is coming down to your values, which we discuss, you'll be fine. Like genuinely be fine. Like focus on things you can control, work hard, try to learn as much as possible. I think one thing that we didn't touch on, and something that thinking about this podcast and potential audience that you have, I think is very important, is one of the challenges that we see when we are looking to recruit young people is they sometimes coming from a larger institutions, they have a lot of processes that they're very good at executing those processes, but often they don't go step further in trying to understand it. So you can ask them a question, they can answer you the question really well, but then you ask a question, well, why? And very quickly it starts to disseminate and then never. So I would also tell that to myself. I think I was good at it, but just kind of don't, if you have a process that irritates you, try to understand why is that in place, what are the good and bad things about it, and then kind of why, how would you think about it if you were in a management position? Would you implement the same thing? How can you improve it? Doing it in that way is definitely going to guarantee you more success, and it will allow you to understand the whole thing. And we here talk about investment banking, fund finance, how it all interrelates. Our finance world, the world in general, is all connected. If you think that your industry is isolated, you're a bit naive. It all works together. And as you start to ask these simple questions, you will get a much better picture. People might not be able to answer you those things, which kind of reflects that they haven't done that journey. But I think that's so important when you do things like why? Why are we doing this? And in the nicest possible way, trying to get to the bottom of it. And then everything will start to fall together.
Believe it or not, we're coming towards the end of the episode. I want to get you to look back on your career. I guess that's what we've been doing, but a couple of more pointed questions in that area. If you went back to your first day in investment banking, knowing what you know now, what piece of advice would you have given yourself?
Yeah, I'll adjust your question a little bit. Since I became an investment banker kind of midstream in my career, I'm actually going to move it back even further to when I started my law career in the Stone Age of 1985, okay? And I think the piece of advice, the single most important piece of advice that I would give myself then, because I was a very stressed out young associate in a law firm environment, and my engine ran really high, and I could get stressed about anything, is to say, look, this is a long game. The things that you are stressed about on day 1 or day 3 or day 5 or even day 370 are not things that, frankly, you're going to even remember that you were stressed about them, even in a year, right? And my encouragement to that young self or to young bankers listening here would be to not to be disregarding of the problems in front of them, right? We're expected to solve those problems, but to realize that the problems we're solving are the problems of the moment and that there's a much longer track in front of you. And what you really want to do for the long haul is develop that skill set so that you become competent not in solving this problem, or it's good to know how to solve that problem, but the better competence is to know how to assess and deal with problems generally, and how to get the right kind of help, how to know when you know that you don't know so that you can go get help. It's building the tool set that makes you much more skilled and well-rounded. And then again, just the intellectual wherewithal to realize that life is this big, grand thing that's got a lot more to it than just investment banking, and trying to keep everything in meaningful perspective. Because again, when I was that young law firm associate, every problem hung over my head and stressed me out and made me anxious. And I think I spent needless time being anxious about issues that, again, today I can't even remember what they are. And it was time wasted because I was not building a broader skill set in those moments. I learned a lot of what I've communicated to you today in the back half of my career, and I sure could have used it much earlier in my career. I just didn't have the tools to bring to the table.
Love that. Anything I haven't asked you yet that you feel the audience should know?
I think you mentioned that you have some young professionals listening to this podcast, and I probably want to remind them that success is not always straightforward and linear. So there will be twists and turns and setbacks in your career, but it's most important that you're resilient, able to adapt to changing environments. You should never underestimate the power of a strong network. So surround yourself with people that challenge you, that inspire you. And last but not least, don't be afraid to ask for help, because people will always help you.
That's great.